I want your horror. I want your disease. I want your freaking STDs. Just kidding. I love Lady Gaga. Okay, so moving on. I am going to talk about my religion and ethics stuff, and talking about the First and Second Amendment rights and censorship and being PC and all that jazz. And so, first of all, as you probably have guessed or probably know, I don't have much of a filter. I use a lot of cuss words, and I kind of speak my mind, which sometimes these days is a bad thing. It's considered a bad thing. Well, I grew up a preacher's kid, so I didn't really have a wild and out, time as a teenager. I was pretty tame, pretty much a goody two-shoes. But then when I got married, moved away, that's when I kind of had my wild stage, and I'm always a little wild. I have a mind of my own, and I kind of do my thing, but yeah, that was my time when I kind of sowed my wild oats and started being crazy and stuff, and smoking and drinking and cussing and being a little bitch. No, really, I'm a nice person. I just I am, promise. I might not always come across that way, and I don't know if I've mentioned it in other videos, but I tend to have an issue with girls. Mean girls kind of thing. And it's not so much, well, when I was younger, it was probably for the obvious reasons that I was skinny and awkward and didn't really fit into the cool group and whatever. And then later on, it was more for the reasons of them thinking that I was a threat, that I was going to steal their guy or whatever. I'm really not that kind of person. I'm not a man-eater or anything. But later on, I had issues with the girls thinking that I was just going to steal their guy, that I was, cute blonde that all the guys tend to like to hang around. Most of the time they just thought I was cool and not an airhead, I think. Being that I'm kind of a guy's girl, and I don't generally, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I don't generally act stuck up. They tend to feel more comfortable around me, so it wasn't like I was just, trying to be a man stealer or a man eater or anything like that. Nothing like that. But I tend to get some hatred from girls for that reason, that they automatically just assume that I'm going to be a threat. And but I tend to speak my mind, and sometimes I realize that I overdo it, that I maybe come across too harsh. Sometimes I try not to. Believe me, I try really hard not to be confrontational or hurt people in any way. But there are times when my opinions come across really strongly to people and they get offended or upset. So just know that I'm not really about that. I do tend to be a little bit of a rebel, and I like a good debate, but I'm not, just a mean-spirited person. It's not me. But because of my tendency to want to speak my mind and express my views, sometimes strong views on things, then people get upset. Problem is, nowadays, as much as there's so many social mediums out there for people to be able to express themselves and do that in a creative way, there's also so much censorship out there and so much, political correctness, to the extent that some people feel like they're stifled, like they can't be able to express themselves artistically, and or just have an opposing opinion on something that's not the most popular opinion. So that is something that bugs me in culture. I realize that with the issues of racism and homophobia and masochism, chauvinism and so forth, that it's kind of a balance thing. You don't want to come across too overly offensive to any one group of people or any one person, but at the same time, if you censor yourself to the point that you can't express your views without being afraid that, without walking on eggshells, that you're going to offend someone, then that's a problem. And it's something that I see a lot in the media. And it's not just a conservative or liberal thing. I do notice that, a lot of Republicans or conservatives, they tend to have really strong views on things and then get shot down whenever they have an idea or an opinion very quickly, because either A, they are being an asshole, or B, they're just expressing their views, and because of the whole political correctness thing, they're not allowed to do that. They're quickly shot down, and so that, people say, oh, well, you're being judgmental, you're being this, or you're being that. Or you're being disrespectful of such and such person or such and such group. And on the other hand, more liberal or democratic type people, they tend to want to embrace different people, different cultures, and be very much like the hero and saving the day and sticking up for the little guy. Or so they say anyways. It's not necessarily always the case, but because that's more the mentality of the more liberal or democratic kind of people in this country. A lot of times they want to protect different groups of people, but in doing so they're disrespecting First Amendment rights of other people. They're going to extremes to not offend different people. And it's not just a conservative, democratic, conservative, Republican, Democratic versus Democratic, or conservative versus liberal thing, but it could be any kind of situation. But I see this happening so much that it's like, say for instance with the instance with Trayvon Martin, it's a very tragic thing to happen, but so many people made it so much about a race thing, to the extent that it was just very polarizing, and it was almost like it was purposely, people were purposely trying to be divisive about it and make it so much of a race thing that it made people so upset and made the issue so polarizing. And it kind of took away from the tragedy of the situation and made it a whole other, media kerfuffle. And that, in my opinion, was just a really bad situation and really wrong. I don't know everything about the situation, but I don't know that it necessarily was a race thing. And I don't think that it was. And if it was, okay, bring it to light. But if you know it, that it was, if you know it, and you can back it up with actual evidence and actual fact, don't just presume that it was a race thing just because just because Trayvon Martin was an African American and the other guy was a white Latino. I'm not sure what the race of the other guy was. But to just assume that it was a racially motivated crime or tragedy or whatever, just incites people to bad reactions. I enjoy the Hunger Games movies, and there was something that came out after the Hunger Games after the Hunger Games movie came out in theaters, something about people being upset about the character Rue being killed and then trying to make some kind of racial issue out of that. And that, to me, I was just like, just enjoy the movie, people. Like, why be so stupid about this? Why try and make a problem where there isn't one? I think some people had a problem with it because maybe she was one of the people that got killed off, and they thought that that was racially wrong or whatever. That the people who are the heroines or who save the day, not really save the day, but who ended up winning the Hunger Games and being the main characters and the ones that everyone was rooting for, that because they were white, then there was something about that, and that because they killed off the black girl, the African-American girl, sorry, that it was necessarily a race thing. And I just see so much of this in the media nowadays that, you know, everything has to be race motivated or racial, you know, one way or another. It's, you know, racist people getting upset and getting offended about certain things, and then people who claim not to be racist trying to make a race issue out of everything. And that to me just seems very divisive and very, what's the word? Very counterproductive in society. I think that as far as we've come as a society to, you know, from the 60s and from the 1960s and from all the race issues of the 60s, and doing away with segregation and doing away with all of that. As far as we've come as a country and as a people, and in other countries as well, that it seems like some people are wanting to regress. And I'm not just talking about the people who are KKK or, you know, some other neo-Nazi racist group of people that are wanting to go back to the good old days of racism and discrimination and segregation. But even the people that claim to be against racism and yet are making everything about race and trying to bring up problems that aren't really there or make them bigger than what they are, I think it's just causing even more problems, and kind of instead of moving forward, we're taking 2 steps back as a country. That's my feeling on this. So, yeah. So anyway, I'm going to make another video on this and delve more into the issues of First and Second Amendment rights and talk a little bit more about censorship, but I'm almost done with this particular part of the topic.